Relations. I'm delighted to be joined by Sir Martin Sorell, who's Chief Executive Officer of WPP, one of the world's leading communications services.
The world's
leading.
Just to keep the crown.
Never missing up a single opportunity to plug the company, and why not? Why not, sir? Stock market value £5 billion still?
No, £17 billion.
My countries are out of date, aren't they?
$29 billion.
How many countries are you involved in?
110 countries. We have 178,000 people.
Wow, what an organisation! And you also passionately...
You wouldn't have invited me on the programme if you knew what the real market cap was.
Oh, of course we would. I know this. You're passionately pro-European, aren't you?
I wouldn't say passionately pro-European, but I lean that way, John. I lean that way.
So
given the opportunity such as this, I would argue for it. But obviously this is a bad day for those people who see Europe linked to Britain's future.
Do you think that's what it's all about? Do you think that's why so many people have voted UKIP? Or is it because they like their immigration policy?
Well, I think probably it is part of that. I'm an immigrant. Well, I'm a second generation UK. My grandparents came from the Ukraine and from Poland and Romania. So if the point system operated now, I probably wouldn't be here, which a lot of people would have said, thank goodness for that.
No, they would not.
But,
you've been a fantastic contribution.
No, it is a bit. It's one-third of... We were talking about it before we came on air. Was one-third of the population voted, pretty much across the board, across Europe. And I think at times like this, in midterm elections, although this is not a midterm election because we have a general election next year, the protest vote, particularly when the turnouts are so low, carry significant weight. And UKIP has done extremely well. We've seen Le Pen do extremely well in France. So it shifts to the right. In Greece, it's a shift to the left. Generally, I think people are saying this is a shift in Europe across to the right. And protest votes and immigration issues, rabble-rousing works at times like this.
But, immigration may have been a part of it, but the stance of those various parties on Europe is also clearly quite relevant, and
yes.
a lot of people across Europe, not just in the UK, are saying we want out, we've had enough of it, as it stands at the moment at least.
Well, of course, in our case, we will have the opportunity if the Conservative-led coalition or a Conservative government wins next year. I mean, Labour now in a difficult position because what are they going to do in relation to a referendum if they were to win the general election next year? But we'll be given a chance to vote on it in 2017 if the coalition comes through or the Conservatives come through, and that will pose a very interesting situation. My own hope or belief is that by 2017 the Western European economy will look stronger. Well, not look stronger, will be stronger. Unemployment rates of 10%, 12%. Youth unemployment rates of double that in most countries. In Spain, still at 50%, mean that people, and a long recession and a gradual coming out of that recession since 2008, since the collapse of Lehman, that has meant that the electorate is highly disturbed and unemployment remains stubbornly at very high levels.
What do you say to those like David Davis who've been saying we can't really wait till 2017, we should be doing it at least a year earlier than that, because it sort of begs a question about Europe, and it puts lots of companies and lots of businesses, maybe even like yours, in jeopardy.
I think companies reading the newspapers this morning, or the digital newspapers this morning, watching digital TV or analog TV, will say this increases the level of uncertainty between now and, in our case, in the UK, 2017. We've already had businesses coming out before these European elections saying increased uncertainty, or a referendum result. Increased uncertainty heightens the likelihood that investment will not be made. The UK depends on foreign direct investment. It depends on its trade with the EU. It depends to some extent on its global influence as a part of the EU. So all these factors militate, or the situation this morning, and we'll see more uncertainty because what is it? A third of the EU Parliament will be from minority dissident parties that wish to defenestrate the EU rather than build it. So we're going to see a lot of turmoil. I mean, Nigel Farage, I think, already has started to say that he will oppose various things.
And what's your response to those like Nigel Farage who say it won't make a scrap of difference to even businesses like yours if we weren't in the EU? I mean, the other countries exist, quite happily without it. Norway and Switzerland.
It's going to, whatever he says, it's going to, because the patterns of trade, the patterns of investment are very European orientated. If we come out, we'll have to renegotiate free trade treaties, which will take a long time. The benefits of everybody talks about the Swiss model. They talk about the Norwegian model. I mean, the Norwegians pay about 75 to 80% of the cost that we bear anyway for the EU without any influence whatsoever. So I think that's really. What happened today will increase the level of uncertainty, and David Davis, I think, is right, actually. Probably will increase the pressure to bring forward any referendum in order to get the decision one way or the other out of the way. And by the way, it also raises an issue in relation to Scotland, because I think probably these results will encourage Scottish separatists and Scottish independents parties or party in a stronger way. So it increases levels of uncertainty at a time when we do have significant uncertainty, and will drive companies, car companies, automobile companies, industrial companies, banks. We don't like banks because of what's happened generally, so people say, but they will drive them away as well. And we've seen now, in a way, the silver lining here is it will encourage those people who do believe in Europe, people who believe in that Scotland, for example, should be part of the UK, to make their case more cogently, because the results do indicate that the case is not being made as effective as it should be.
Well, that's precisely what I was going to ask you, because, what's your view of the way in which David Cameron's handled this, particularly bearing in mind the remarks of Ian Duncan-Smith the other day, said he was staggered to discover that so many people didn't even know that a referendum was on offer if they voted Conservative at the next election. I mean, there has been, it would appear, a serious failure of communication here on this particular front.
Well, it's a long way to go. We have a year or so to go to the general election, but I think what this result does show, whether it's statistically strong or not, I mean, the fact is a third of the people voted. They have voted in this way. The results are there. It will cause, I think, some degree of chaos in the EU Parliament. What we all have to do, those of us who believe in the case for the EU, have to put the case much more effectively, much more cogently, much more coherently, and much more effectively. Otherwise, this uncertainty will accelerate and will cause even greater problems.
When he goes to negotiate a new deal,
or tries to get better terms,
what would you like to see come out of that?
Well, I'd obviously like to see greater benefit to the UK. I'd like to see, the two parliaments that we have in Strasbourg and in Brussels, one of them gone. The waste that we see, the bureaucracy that we see, this issue about whether the EU is bureaucratic. I mean, we sort of sometimes shoot ourselves in the foot because we gold plate in the UK some of the EU legislation to a significant degree. In other words, we make it worse. Days leave is a good example. 20 days, I think it is, that comes out from the EU, and we in the UK insist as a result on 28 days. So there are these issues. But what I'd like to see is a streamlined bureaucracy. A bureaucracy with a smaller b rather than a big B. I would like to see less waste, because they do have a €1 trillion budget, which I'm sure they could make significant savings on. Companies ask their people to make 10% cuts, 15, 20% cuts in order to be more efficient and effective and competitive. We should see that. Less rules, reduction in rules in terms of its impact on business, particularly on small and medium-sized enterprise, and more stimulation of it. Those are the sorts of things that we will need to see.
And your response to people I'm sure you meet in daily life who, touching on what you've just said, just see Europe as a massive unnecessary bureaucracy and a gravy train for a lot of officials and politicians who have a wow of a time in Strasbourg.
Well, that's a populist rabble-rousing saying. But there is truth in that, and that's what this vote expresses. And the people who voted, who obviously feel passionately about it, are expressing that concern. And look, all businesses now, particularly in a world which is not as fast growth, not as high growth as it was before the Lehman bankruptcy in 2008, all businesses have to reduce costs and become more effective and more efficient. Same thing should apply to government in the context of Brussels, and indeed in the context of the UK too, and in Scotland if it was independent.
What happens then? I mean, Cameron is taking a risk, isn't he, by promising a referendum? What happens if the great British nations say, well, thank you very much indeed, David, but we won't bother if you don't mind?
We won't bother going...
We'll pull out. We don't want to know.
Well, I think the impact of that on it's quite possible, and one has to say it's a possibility. And the increased level of uncertainty between now and 2017, if that's the date of the referendum, will mean less investment, less jobs, a reduction in the GNP growth in the UK, a reduction in the wealth of every household. Every household benefits to the extent it's calculated £3,000 per household, about £1,225, I think to be precise, per individual in that household as a result of being a member of the EU. That will be lost.
And do you agree with Nigel Farage when he said that the UKIP fox is now in the parliamentary henhouse?
Oh, yeah, definitely is.
And does it worry you?
Well, obviously, it's democracy at work. If that's what the people want, I mean, there will be positive things that come out of it, and there will be negative things out. And the problem with this is, I think, to some extent, it's seen as the benefit of elites, either in the southeast or elites in Brussels. This whole procedure and this whole organisation. But the fox is in the hen house. Whether this is a midterm phenomenon, whether we'll be sitting here perhaps in a 12 months' time, John, and say, look, it was a midterm phenomenon and it didn't hold out until the general election, we'll see.
Well, they're saying that they'll be lucky to replicate what they've achieved in Europe.
Even Farage is saying that.
Nevertheless, they're shaking a few trees, aren't they?
It is, I wouldn't say it's an earthquake, but it's certainly a big shudder.
It's a significant tremor. We can choose
a very big one. Yeah.
It's been a delight talking to you. Thank you very much indeed for being with us, Sir Martin Sorell.
Delighted.
CEO of WPP, the world's largest communications and advertising agency in dozens and dozens of countries all over the world, employing thousands and thousands of people. Your views are very welcome. Thank you very much indeed for being with us. Coming up after the traffic and travel, we'll continue our discussion on the European election. Remember, 36% of the population, only 36% of the population turned up to vote. Should we make it illegal not to turn up on polling day? This is LBC. It's 10:45.
I'm Adam McCall in the LBC Travel Centre. Better news from Berkshire. The M4 was blocked earlier on. Junctions 12 to 13.